All right, what's going on, everyone? So, I've been seeing like a billion people reacting to the new Blink song since it came out, and I'm not surprised because one, it's the first new like single since Edging, but the second single with Tom since he came back, and number two, the context of the song and the video just doesn't surprise me, and I think a lot of people are having the same reaction. But it got me thinking about a couple of things. Number one, after seeing Blink in May, back-to-back nights with Tom again for the first time in a while, are they the biggest they've ever been? Because I kind of think that they are, and I want to explore why that might be, and just kind of their general relevance, because it's almost like they have a resurgence, but they keep getting bigger every year at the same time. So I just want to kind of explore that timeline and give you some thoughts, and you maybe can give me some thoughts. So if you got anything to reply to me with, please comment below, give me a like, a sub, or just, say what's up. Otherwise, let's dive into it. So I'm not going to break down the whole history of the band here because if you're watching this, you probably are pretty well aware of it. If not, we can just go through it generally. There's kind of different eras of the band that people know it by, but when I was kind of putting this together or trying to write down my thoughts, I recognize it more in a different way because instead of being like by album or, by, decade or whatever, I'm thinking more like where they were in the band. So you have like 92 to 95 when they start the band, they do the first few demos, they do Cheshire Cat, and then they kind of start playing locally, start getting a big fan base in the area, and then start doing some tours. 96, 97, obviously they start to get bigger and they get the attention of MCA among other labels. They sign, they do Dude Ranch, and they start getting some radio airplay, some MTV airplay with Damn It. Warp Tour obviously is becoming a thing and they're doing well on that. We all kind of know where they're at there. 98 is kind of the biggest year here up to this point because Travis joins the band. And from then on, it kind of becomes this really big thing because they start to get bigger just touring Dude Ranch and debuting some of the stuff that would be on Enema. Obviously, they debuted Mutt with Scott, but, they're starting to play things like Aliens Exist and Dumpweed, and they end up being an American Pie. And 99, they put out the sixth best-selling album of 1999, and I'm not joking. According to bestsellingalbums.org, Enema of the State is the sixth best-selling album of 1999, which is pretty crazy because to most people who are at least familiar with the album, it's a bunch of pop punk songs about like high school romance and parties and aliens and among other things. And you have a porn star dressed as a nurse on the cover, yet it sold over 60 million copies, it went 16 times platinum, and from then on it keeps growing and more people are hearing the album, especially today with streaming and things like that. So most people who are familiar with the band know they went from there from 99. Obviously they did the Warp Tour and they're probably too big to do it, but kind of a favor to Kevin Lyman as the story goes. That's for a different video. They do the Loser Kids Tour, which gets recorded and gets turned into the Mark, Tom, and Travis Show album to promote that tour. They keep getting bigger. Jacket comes out, does just as good, maybe better than Enema of the State because it was kind of, they're still growing from that other album. And then 02 happens, they're huge, but things are kind of weird because Boxcar comes out. They do this 03 album, which I have the poster back here. It takes them almost the whole year. They get kicked out of the people's house. You can watch the MTV special on YouTube. Okay, we all know where they go from there. That whole kind of craziness of like 99 to 03, 04, where they're just giant, was just the peak of the band at that point. And then February of 05, they do this indefinite hiatus. And things were kind of weird because if you were kind of around, I was pretty young, but I was checking out TRL all the time and things like that. 99, 2000 is like, Blink's popular, but then like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and all that kind of pop stuff is really big. And Eminem is coming out with his first full length and is blowing up and kind of bringing in all that like Aftermath Interscope stuff that was getting really popular at the time. A lot of other hip hop going on then too. New metal is getting huge and bands like Korn are blowing up, and then kind of in a similar vein like the Deftones kind of stuff and Limp Bizkit and a lot of these other bands who were bigger in the earlier part of the 90s maybe are still successful, but they're not in the main focus anymore, the kind of grunge, post-grunge stuff. And Blink, it was kind of an anomaly because Green Day obviously is considered like a punk or pop punk band, at least they were at some point, and they're huge obviously. And the Offspring obviously did extremely well with Smash, nowhere near as big as Blink or Green Day. But being a pop punk band, especially being so crazy with like the language and how vulgar they were and all that stuff, Blink was special. They just had a charm to them. A lot of people were attracted to them. And I think when they broke up in 2005, a lot of people either maybe had memories of those, years where they got into the band. And, you hear people talk about it who were into them back in San Diego in like 94, 95, how when Dude Ranch came out, it was kind of weird. And then by Enema, they were kind of like out. And then there's people who get into them with Enema of the State. And then by the time '03 happens or '04, '05, they break up, they're kind of out. But a lot of people, I think, kind of come back to the band because they have fond memories of those times. They still like the songs. And then some people end up, growing into liking the newer stuff that comes out, be it, some people who didn't like them getting popular liking the Untitled record, or some people who, maybe weren't so into like the Matt Skiba stuff. Now some of them are like, it's okay. I'll get to that in a minute, but just an example. And for me, I was really bummed when they broke up because I was 13. They were my favorite band. I never had gotten to see them yet. And I was a little bit younger than obviously a lot of the people who were, maybe 14, 15, 16, and 99 who were getting into them. But that's kind of my point, is like people that I were in school with and all of my friends, like everybody liked Blink. They were just one of those bands. And so it's kind of weird because we're kind of behind the curve there. And then 06, 07, '08, they're gone. Angels and Airwaves is a thing, Plus 44 is a thing, but Blink's gone, and the state of music is changing really around '06. Like, album sales are really dropping. It's MP3s, like, had been a thing, but like '06, like MP3s, iPods, it's starting to take over. Bands aren't selling CDs like they used to. And vinyl hadn't really been reintroduced as like a fad. Like, obviously, there are always bands who put out records on vinyl, but you weren't seeing it at like FYE or whatever, like nowadays you can go to like any store that has music and they might not have CDs, but they'll have vinyl. It's on some sort of fashion. So with this kind of era and Warped Tour still being a thing, and there's a lot of like neon pop punk is kind of the thing, and this kind of post-hardcore, post-emo type of stuff. It was a really weird era, and I think when Blink came back in '09, it had been just enough time where so many people obviously were excited for them to come back, but I feel like they actually kind of caught like a second wind where they became more popular. Because when you think about Blink breaking up in '05 and then getting back together in '09, you got to think of the state of the internet, right? So YouTube becomes a thing in the time period where they break up, maybe slightly before, and then by '09 is, every band has their own channel, all their music videos around there. You're not depending on MTV anymore because MTV is going away. It's really interesting to me when you think about that context, because for me, I started this channel out of boredom for fun because I loved playing guitar. And before I was even old enough to drive, I started this channel because I was like, well, I can't, on the days I don't have band practice or I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm going to go home and play guitar from 3 o'clock until I go to sleep. I might as well put up some covers for fun. That's all it was me playing Blink covers. I think I did a lesson for Going Away to College that had a lot of views at some point. And I wasn't even thinking about it from a standpoint of like, wow, like maybe people are going to watch this. I was just like, cool, I'll check it out. Maybe I can have fun with it. And that era of the YouTube allowed people to be introduced to things they may have missed or not seen since it happened. Obviously Blink's Australian Big Day Out show, it wasn't remastered and in a full set because back then you couldn't play hour-long videos. They were like maybe a 10-minute cap. It might have been shorter back then. But they would do every song, people would post them. The Road Home was on back then. Tons of like, them playing on Letterman and them playing on Conan and all these cool, there's a point where I'd seen every single Blink-182 video on YouTube. Now that's probably impossible because one, YouTube's so much bigger, and two, I don't think I could dedicate the time, especially because there's a lot of them I don't know if I'd be interested in. But point being, YouTube really, I think, allowed the band to be widespread around the world and grow more because people who weren't around to experience them, watching them on TRL or going to their shows or just being around in that era, you had gotten to see them. So by the time '09 rolls around, so many people are excited to go see them. And I remember I went to the Chicago date of that. I think it was August 15th of '09. Couldn't wait to go to that. That was like one of the best days of my life for me because I was about to turn 17. Had never seen my favorite band. I was right up front. They opened with Dumpweed. It was awesome. And looking back on it, I had a great time. But it was really awkward because Blink was kind of discombobulated. And if you'd seen them announce, I remember finding out that they were getting back together before they announced it on, it was the Grammys, I think, '09 in February. And so it had been exactly 4 years since they announced the hiatus. They were not really all there. Like Tom's kind of off to the side, and it was awkward. And they expected like people to be like, "Yeah, Blink's back," when they announced it, and nobody really cared because it's the Grammys, and they're like, "What? Okay, whatever." But you got to think before then, when they're on the Grammys or when they're on like Billboard Music Awards or the VMAs or whatever, like people lost their shit for them. So this is kind of weird, and it kind of shows you how quick fame can come and go for some of these artists. Now, I think Blink's relevance is more at a hardcore level, but people still obviously know who they are. So it's kind of that's the line they were riding then. And then we get another 2 years until Neighborhoods comes out, and people have mixed feelings about it. And even though I do like it, it is awkward. Like you could tell they're missing Jerry Finn. You could tell they hadn't been together in a long time, and they're trying to do different stuff that's not well, if had Neighborhoods come out in 05 or 06 with no split, maybe just like a healthy break where they're on talking terms, the follow-up to Untitled would have probably been awesome. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. So it's kind of awkward, right? But again, this gives a lot of people their first opportunity to go buy a Blink album the day it comes out or to listen to it the day it comes out. And Dogs Eating Dogs felt like, okay, this is closer to, maybe not for everybody, but for most of us, felt closer to what Blink kind of is as the three of them. And then we get Tom leaving again. And when I woke up and read that news in like 2015 or whatever it was, I was kind of just like, what the fuck? Because it just felt like they get back together and we have high hopes. It takes forever to get new music, 2 years, right? Okay, fine. Then they kind of don't really do much from 11 to 14, Dogs Eating Dogs, 5 songs. Okay. And I kind of wasn't mad at Tom. I was just kind of like, this sucks. This is my favorite band, but humans got to do what you got to do. They're not, I don't know them in real life. I'm not going to comment on their situation. And then hearing Skibo was coming in to fill in that music festival, I don't know. It was weird. It was like, I like Alkaline Trio. I'm a fan of Matt Skiba. I live near Chicago, and that's, like a band that everybody around here like knows and loves. But it's just like Matt Skiba and Tom DeLonge are not the same, personality-wise. Skiba's a great musician. He's a great songwriter. He's, a different type of guitar player, a different type of singer. It just isn't the same. And I do appreciate California 9 for what they are. There's some songs I really like. I'm not a hater in that regard, but I feel like when 2015, when I heard that announcement, I was like, okay, that they have obligations to do this show. It was like Travis's, I forget what the festival was, something about tattoos or whatever. It was like some big fest. And so when I heard that, I'm like, well, that's cool that they're at least gonna, play for the people that paid, even though I thought he should have at least gone through with the commitment. Now, I am one of those people who, I have all of Tom's books and I've checked out everything he's doing, and I actually am very interested in a lot of that stuff, be it like consciousness and UFO studies, and not on the like base level of, like aliens, but I know that most people, when it comes to Blink, they're there for the music, and if you don't care about that stuff, respect, like that's fine. So I don't really have beef about the whole thing like some people do. I think I was just happy when Tom came back. So when you go through these eras now, I'm thinking 09 to 14, 15 to 19 is kind of like its own thing because Skiba plays the festival. We get California, and man, was that weird because I had seen them on the 09 and 11 tours, and then I go in 16, so it'd been a while. I didn't go. I think they played Riot Fest, and they played Lala at some point too, but I don't like going to those festivals, so I didn't go. I saw them at Riot Fest after that, but we'll get there. So 2016, this California tour is very strange. The album itself, I didn't mind. I know that there's a lot missing from it, but it just is an album on its own, not trying to judge it as Blink-182. I think it's pretty enjoyable. There's some songs I really like. It came out it kind of at the right time because, late summer, early fall. I think by the time they came to Chicago, it was September, like early September, so it was still warm out here. And it was, cool set. They played a lot of good songs, but it was just awkward because like that was the first time I'd seen them with Skiba like in person, and it is just different. And I can see why people who maybe weren't Blink fans the way that some of us were earlier than that, or maybe they were, have more like fond memories of that. And I'm not cutting down Matt Skiba. It's just the Blink is special because of the people who make it up, and you could see No disrespect to Scott Raynor. I mean, Dude Ranch is one of my favorite records, but when Travis joined, those three just made it was just different. And I think 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, you get to 9. I saw them again at Riot Fest, and I have big beef about this. So for those of you who don't know, Riot Fest is in Chicago, and majority of the time, if you have a slot at Riot Fest, you have to sign a contract where you cannot play in that area within so many a certain time frame, months, right? So Blink was in the middle of their Enema of the State 20-year tour. So instead of playing at an amphitheater and us getting like the full thing, we had to see them in our area at Riot Fest. Now I know I could have probably driven to like Indianapolis or Pittsburgh or something, and I probably should have. And if Tom was in the band, I would have done that. I wouldn't have settled for just the festival. But I said, screw it, I'll give it a go. They were supposed to play the year previously, which wasn't for Enema. It was just for 2018. They dropped out because Travis had, he messed up his hands or something? I can't remember. And it was just weird because they played all of Enema of the State, which was really cool, but with Skiba. And, you know, like, his tones are, like, the 2 times I saw them with him, the tones are weird. He uses, I think him and Mark were both on Kemper. But some of, I don't know, the cleans were too loud and the distorted parts weren't loud enough. That's just a sound thing. It's not on Matt. But then too, like, I don't know, I could tell the riffs aren't played the same. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad guitar player by any means. He might be a better guitar player than Tom. But, like, Tom is specific. And I do a lot of talking about that on this channel. So, yeah, anyways, it's just weird. So when they got back together, you know, 2020 and 2021, and obviously everything with Mark's, I didn't talk about Travis's plane crash, but that was a big thing, obviously, when they first got back together before it happened. I think it was August of 08. I remember we were all, like, really scared. And thankfully he, you know, came out of that, which was amazing. And then, you know, Mark getting cancer and all, I mean, it was horrible, and I'm so glad he's okay. Them writing the song about how those things, it shouldn't take those things to get them to be together is really interesting, and I think we can all kind of see that at a face value. But at the same time, I think it shows you that they care about each other and they think the band is important because those events made them be like, oh, I care about this person. Like, it just kind of like, hey, life is bigger. So them announcing they're back together, I thought it was going to happen once Mark was kind of like, hey, I'm getting better. I'm like, and you know, because you'd see stuff where him and Tom are friends again and we're talking and we're cool and we're joking and it feels real and whatever. I'm like, they're probably going to do something because Tom had started doing more stuff with Angels and Airwaves. He hadn't done that in a long time either. So I wasn't like surprised, but I was very happy when they announced it and we got the song. I'm not going to give too many thoughts on the new music that's out so far because that could be like a different video. I like it, I'll just say that. But I'm more just like happy because they seem to be on the level that they want to be as friends, and as musicians, they're probably playing the best that I've ever seen them play. I went both nights in Chicago, and it was really, really fun. I mean, the set list was good. Everybody around me was cool. Like, a lot of times you sit at a show, you never know if you're gonna be by some jag-off or what, but everybody was really cool. We had a good time both nights. My brother and I actually took my mom to see Blink for the first time the second night, and she loved it, so that was fun. Yeah, I mean, it was great, and it felt like a big party. It didn't feel like a reunion as much as it felt like just right. Like, because Blink never really broke up a second time. Tom just left. It was different. It's hard to explain. But my point here in this part of the timeline is I think that they got even bigger in that time span because, you know, now I'm at an age where I can kind of look at, you know, younger people that I know, like family, friends, and cousins, and you know, things like that, where I talk to them, and I have a lot of cousins who are like in high school and middle school, and they're like, yeah, like they're into Blink and like, you know, Nirvana, 90s music and stuff like that too. But I'm like, wow, like this is really interesting because in we'll say 2009, a lot of them were like, they were born. So like they were just being born, 2008, 2009, some of them. And some after. So like they didn't even, you know, by the time that they're cognizant of anything, like Tom's not around or they're little kids, they're not listening to blink-182. So for them to be into it now, it kind of shows that the lasting impression of the music is, hey, like we made this, you know, in these different eras, but we're singing about things that are relevant all the time. Like technology changes and, you know, fashion changes, and that's kind of cyclical too though. But you know, you put on some of these songs and it's the same, and it takes me back to like being in 8th, ninth, 10th, 11th grade, whatever. But everybody goes through that. Like in the late 90s and early 2000s, Blink was so popular and influential that anybody who could make money off of them was. Obviously, this is an era where people are selling albums, so the record labels are taking advantage of it. They're selling like VHS and DVDs of whatever they can put out of the band. They're selling CDs and tapes. They're obviously selling merchandise. But then, you know, Blink's getting endorsements, so they're getting like the Quicksilver endorsements. I want to say that they were endorsed by them maybe like 97-ish. Later on, they get endorsed by Hurley, and they're seeing all these kids show up to shows. You know, I've heard people talk about this, that like, I'm from the Midwest. We don't surf. I mean, people skateboard and, you know, try to snowboard, but we have winter half the year. So it's like when you are in the Midwest in the summer and, you know, you're seeing kids wearing all these different colors around this shirt in Hurley and bright yellow and orange and backwards hats and Dickie shorts, and, you know, you could see the influence Blink had. And they were smart enough to capitalize on that and start loserkids.com and start Atticus and start Macbeth and Travis with Famous Stars and Straps. And I mean, Famous obviously did really well for a long time outside of the kind of pop punk fandom, Blink community, skateboarding. A lot of people, I mean, I know people who have tattoos of that logo. I mean, it's crazy. But, you know, Macbeth did well for a while. I believe they were making a comeback. Atticus was pretty popular, and they had the compilations. I know people want them to come back. And then, you know, Tom did a lot of different stuff like Mod Life, and they still have all these different projects. He does his books. To the Stars has like a lot of merchandise, and he's wearing his own merch. Tom's a business guy, I mean, flat out. And, you know, Mark has done well with all his projects. Travis is involved in everything. I think too, a big thing with Blink, when you love like that kind of music as a kid and it's not so out of reach to learn how to play it, it's really influential and kind of a monumental thing, because for a kid to pick up their first guitar at like 12, like me, and be able to start learning those songs pretty quickly, as long as, you know, I practiced them, it kind of taught me how to play guitar and put songs together. I have the Tom DeLonge Strat reissue sitting here, and I have the original, and, you know, I have some of his other stuff too. They just put this out again since he's back with Fender, and they're selling out like crazy because people never got them. They want another one. They got into the band after it was out. I mean, it's like, it's a money-making machine. And if you're not involved in the kind of guitar world, people build these all the time. I mean, I have some different ones that are similar. People build their own versions. Tom DeLonge, you know, Tom DeLonge style Strat has kind of become known as its own thing in that world, even if you're playing other genres. I think Blink 2, when they got huge, it was kind of the perfect storm of like everything that was going on in the late 90s, because aside from the other genres that were huge, it's like Tony Hawk starts putting out games in 99, and X Games is big, and skateboarding becomes more of a worldwide thing, at least as far as people knowing about it and knowing about competitive skateboarding and things like that. That goes along with people dressing in that fashion and all the sales that they had with the endorsements and their own brands. They're selling a ton of tickets, and you know, their tours are selling out like crazy. They're on TV all the time. It was just such a for Blink, it was probably the coolest time of their life, at least initially. And for other people, it was kind of a big cash grab, but it kept going. So this is going to sound kind of strange, but I'm going to try to verbalize it the best that I can. I think because of Blink's potential as like a cash grab to people who saw them as a product and not as like, you know, a band they're a fan of or artists, they were put into these spotlight settings as far as merchandising in different ways. But because they were connected and were a success in that way, it grew the band culturally. I don't know where I put it, but I have Blink pop vinyl of them and doing What's My Age Again with no clothes on. Like, that's crazy. So it's kind of weird because like it's a nostalgia thing in that regard for people of my age and the older generations who like Blink. I don't consider myself the oldest or the original. I just mean like, for me, I have nostalgia for some of those eras because, you know, I saw them on TV. I mean, I watched the VMAs when they won, and I was like, my boys, like I was like rooting for them. And then for other people who are younger, it's like the songs still hold weight and there's like relevance, and it's kind of a cool mixture. Like, because I remember like the second night that I saw Blink this year, I ran into a ton of friends and family. Like, there was a lot of people I knew at that show, and I was just walking around the concourse, taking pictures of people, you know, checking out, like, what merch did you get, and, like, talking to them about the night before. Some of them were there somewhere, whatever. And ran into some family friends of ours, and the one, she's in high school still, she's like a senior, got into Blink in the Skiba era pretty much. So I remember her going like, oh, I'm so excited to see them with Tom. This is so awesome. They're going to play some older stuff I haven't seen them play. But then she's like, I hope they play Blame It On My Youth. I really love that song. And I kind of chuckled because I'm like, you know, I know a lot of people maybe aren't going to be like, that's the song I want to hear. But I go, that's cool that you're like, hey, that was a song that hit with me when I was getting into the band. But also, I'm so stoked to see them with the classic lineup. There's that give and take there. I think that it's a really interesting time for the band. And I don't know, this was kind of a personal video for me, more or less going through the timeline from my point of view and trying to think about it in a bigger scheme of things. But I think Blink is the biggest that they've ever been as far as popularity. Some people are probably going to tell me like, no, they're way more popular at the height of like Enema of the State and Jacket. And I understand what you mean in that regard, like being on TV and stuff, or being on TV all the time and in the spotlight. But because of the state of the world and the internet and people kind of tuning into what they want to watch with like YouTube and social media and things like that, I think that they are doing unbelievably well, and they're doing more than just a nostalgia act. I think there is a lot of nostalgia that plays into it, but they're also probably doing some of the best music they've done since 2003. That remains to be seen with the whole record, but it's very good so far, in my opinion, at least for what I think that they should be doing at this point in their career. They are all almost 50. I know Mark's over 50. I'm not expecting them to keep putting out Jacket type songs, but at the same time, when they play the old stuff, it seems like nothing's changed. So I just wanted to give my kind of perspective heading into this album release. I didn't want to just review the video or react, because I know like those videos get a lot of views, I'm sure, and people like doing them, and that's awesome because people enjoy watching them. I watched a bunch, but I'm kind of just like taking a step back and going like, wow, this could be a really big time for the band with this record coming out. I think that the upcoming tours after the world tour, I'm sure they'll take a break, but they're going to eventually have to tour this album. At least they'll probably play 4 or 5 songs at least off of it when they do it. And if they like it that much and it hits with people, it could be a big deal. They don't have to put out an album every 2 years. They don't have to tour into the ground. I just think Blink needs to keep being themselves and being who they want to be and who they love being as a band and as people, because when they are at their most real selves, that's what all the fans enjoy the most, I think. So we'll see where this goes. I'm going to keep kind of doing some Blink related stuff. I'm going to do some other videos as well and probably review some of the new stuff that comes out. But I just wanted to talk about this a little bit from my vantage point because I thought it was an interesting time for the band, and I'm really looking forward to what's in the future for them. So if you made it to the end of the video, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please give it a like if you liked it, or a sub if you want to keep up with the channel. If you have any requests or comments, please drop them down, and peace out.